Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your support. The outpouring of love over the past few days for this event has been overwhelming, and I'm so grateful to you for being here. Thank you so much. So let's start with a little intro. So I wanted to be everything when I was in school. I mean, everything. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I wanted to be a veterinarian, a psychologist, a lawyer, a belly dancer. I mean, everything under the sun. I wanted to be it. And of course, I had to give up some of those dreams. But I feel like if I had got better information at the point when I needed to make my career choices, I probably would have made different decisions. Now that I've entered the working world, I'm starting to realize that a lot of the ideas that I was sold about the working world when I was younger were either inaccurate or incomplete. And I'm coming to believe that if I had had better guidance and better information when I was at the point of making my career choices, I would have probably made different decisions. Does that sound like you? Well, that's why I came up with the Miseducated Career Guide series to give young people who are at the point of making choices about their careers and older people who might have been miseducated like me, the access to the information that I didn't have when I was younger that would have probably made a world of difference in my life choices. So we're going to have conversations with people who are doing the things that you think you want to do, people who are doing things that you didn't think you wanted to do, and people who are doing things that you've never even heard of. All of this in the Miseducated Career Guide series. I'm your host, Khadija Chin Bartley, and I love saying that. So let's get started. The three guests that we have today are three different personalities in three different industries, but they have one thing in common. Let's see. We have Kelly Go, environmental economist, Travis Bartley, public education and community outreach officer, and Treya Picking, environmental officer with responsible for fauna. So Kelly's in business economics, Travis is in communications, PR, and Treya is in conservational biology. What could they possibly have in common? Well, they all work for one organization, and all of the work that they do goes towards one single goal: to protect Jamaica's natural resources. All of my guests today work for the National Environment and Planning Agency of Jamaica, NEPA. So let's talk to them a little more to see what their jobs involve and how each of their individual roles go towards serving this one central purpose. So we're going to start with Kelly Gow, or environmental economist. Welcome, Kelly. You mentioned some of the things that you do on your job. Can you share some more about that? What are some of the most exciting things you do in your job to the not so exciting?
Well, pre-COVID, I should say, the most exciting thing about my job was the opportunity to travel because environment is very important to a lot of people in the world. So there are multilateral agencies, there are countries who come together to ensure that environmental policies put in place to secure basically our future. So a lot of what I had to do was to travel to conferences and workshops to learn about new tools and methods to capture and or just to help the past. So that would probably be my most exciting thing about my job. My least exciting would probably be to review reports. Having a 300, 400 page document to review, to go through, and yeah, so that's kind of tedious, but the work has to get done.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure even though it's not as exciting, it's definitely important in the process. Documentation, reports, that kind of thing. So you majored in economics at the University of the West Indies. When completing your degree, did you think you would end up at NEPA?
No. When I completed my degree, I started an internship at Sagicor. I wanted to go into banking and financial investments. I wanted to go that route. So I started an internship at Sagicor. But then a professor at UWI told me that NEPA was looking for an environmental economist, and he said I should try. So I sent in my application, my resume, and I came in, I did the assessment that they asked me to do, and I ended up getting the job. So, and then I had to learn the environmental side on the way. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you thought you'd go in, you had a certain vision of where an economist works. But you realized that a lot of different
in a bank, Ministry of Finance. Yeah.
But you realize a lot of different companies and industries also require economists. Just this week, I was talking to somebody who said that where he works, they have transport economists. So the Ministry of Transport has transport economists. And I never thought of transportation and economics.
Say economists, they solve problems. So they try to satisfy people's wants and needs by basically solving problems. You have health economists, you have agricultural economists, you have behavioral economists. It's very interesting.
That's nice. That's nice. So somebody with maybe two different passions could probably merge them together. So if your favorite subjects in school are like economy and economics and geography, maybe environmental economics. If you love, biology and economics, you could probably merge those two things and you wouldn't have to necessarily choose, which many young people are forced to do, choose between one or the other. That's nice. So is your job what you thought it would be when you went in?
Well, I had no idea what it would be. Coming out of the private sector per se, you'd hear things being said about public sector, but I had no expectations going in, to be completely honest. I was just open to the experience, open to learning as much as I can and being as useful as I can in my position. So, and it has been fulfilling so far. I mean, traveling, of course, but also there's some documentation that I have done that is being utilized by the agency. So there is fulfillment in my job. So it's not bad.
Nice. And we need the environment. We have no other environment to go to. So people like you and Travis, all in your different ways, are protecting our natural resources. And we salute you guys and thank you so much. Let's shift a little bit and talk about money. Now, we don't necessarily need dollar values, but I'd like to know, and I'm sure many people in the audience would like to know, what are salaries like in your field? Do you think wages are fair in terms of salary? What does somebody coming in need to know?
First, let me say that Jamaicans are grossly underpaid. So if I was to look at the international standards, it's nowhere near where I would earn, probably, even with just a first degree in economics and some experience in the field. Still probably should be earning more, but it's government, so I really don't know what to tell you there. But it's fine. I survive.
So it's enough for a young person to survive.
Starting out, yes. I believe so.
Okay. Would it become a lot more difficult if you had maybe a child, for example?
Yes, it would be. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it would be.
Oh, so you mentioned that it's government.
But maybe, okay, so, yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
No, I was just saying that you mentioned that it's government. But I'm sure many people in the audience who are interested in economics might not end up in government.
Right.
How
Okay. Well, yes.
does that compare?
Most of the other environmental economists I know, they are at UE or they are at another multilateral agency like ECLAC, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, or UNDP or UNEP. Those that are probably based in Jamaica are they're paid pretty well for their services, because most of them they do consultation. So consultation, that's the word, consultation.
Yeah, consultation, consultancy.
Yeah, they do consultancy. That's the word. I'm so sorry. Yeah, they do consultancies. So, and consultants are paid pretty fairly, I believe, in the country. So private sector will probably fare better. But private sector aren't as open with their salaries as public sector. So it's hard to tell.
It's hard to know. I got you. I got you. So you mentioned consultancy. So there are opportunities for doing consultancy work. There are opportunities for freelancing. What other opportunities are there for growth in your field? Like if you wanted to take your career to the next level, what could you do? Where could you go? What's the room for growth in maybe not just environmental economics, but just maybe economics in general?
There's also room. You can go all the way up to PhD in economics. You can probably become an advisor at the ministry. There is a lot of opportunities for growth as it relates to this field. For example, I could do a master's in economics and apply to work at a consultancy. So there are other opportunities for growth.
Nice. Last couple questions. When did you know this was what you wanted to do? And how?
I still don't know if this is what I want to do full time. I really like the entrepreneurship field and, working for yourself and stuff. So I guess my first trip away, I was like, okay, I could live like this. So that's probably 2018. That's a year in. So yeah, if I do stay in environmental economics field though, I would plan to get a higher degree, maybe work as a consultant part-time, because I do have some freedom in my position at the agency that would afford me the ability to do that. So maybe I could do that, but I really don't know if I see myself in this position in 10 years, to be honest. So
totally fair. That's totally fair. And last question for now, because I have one more for you at the end. What path could somebody leaving high school now take to get into your field?
It would be recommended that they get a first degree in environmental economics. I know at the University of the West Indies, they offer a course in social sciences, though, in environmental economics. So I would advise anybody doing it to get an econ base. If they're staying in Jamaica, to get an econ base first. So go with economics and probably have a natural environmental elective over science tech. I don't know, because I can see some breathing room, so you could pick up something as heavy as that. If you plan to go away, there are a lot of schools abroad offer environmental economics as a first degree. So I'd advise them to go with the actual degree in environmental economics, so they wouldn't have to be catching up like what I had to do.
Okay, that's good advice. And if they're in high school now, choosing subjects, CSEC subjects,
okay,
and CSEC subjects.
A lot of the requirements for that environmental first degree is a degree in economics or a degree in environmental science. So I'd advise them to go, if they can, a mixture of business and science, so that they can get an idea of both fields to see if it would actually be something they're interested in, if possible.
Nice. Thank you, Kelly. We'll come back to you shortly. Thank you very, very much. Next, we're going to talk to Travis. Travis Bartley, Public Education and Community Outreach Officer at NEPA. And just a reminder for those of you who are here and might have questions, if you put them in the chat, we will take them later on in the show. We might be able to take one or two at the end. So feel free to share your questions and comments in the chat section. So now we're moving on to Travis. Now, Travis, you majored in communication, arts, and technology. You have a bachelor's in communication, arts, and technology from the University of Technology. Give me a minute. All right. So you have an interesting story of how you came into that degree program and how you came to realize that PR and communication was what you really wanted to do. Can we get a synopsis of that story?
Oh, well, I'll try to give a synopsis. Not really good at telling short stories. But I started out at university actually in engineering, somewhat in engineering. So I was going to do mechanical engineering. I was going to be a mechanical engineer. I was going to earn lots of money and make my mother a big house, you know, and be this really successful engineer walking around on the side with a white hat. But I remember when that changed, you know, and it was when I was in a class, I think it was a physics class, and we had about 3 hours of physics already. So we had 3 hours in the class, and the lecturer paused to ask if we wanted to continue. And it was at that point that I recognized that while I could do this, I did not want to do this. To me, 3 hours of physics on a day when you've had math and the other engineering subjects was more than enough. And that was the turning point for me, because I realized that I didn't have the passion that my other classmates had. Because when the man asked if we wanted to continue with more physics, the classmates said yes. They were so excited about continuing with it, and I was not. So I went over to the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies, and I basically asked them, give me the closest thing you have to Carmack without sending me over to Carmack. And fortunately for me, the program that they had, it was communication, but technology was heavily integrated into it, which is why the major is communication, arts, and technology. So that's how I got started in that, as it relates now to why I felt that connection to it in the first place. And it wasn't just like, oh, I couldn't make it in engineering, so I settled for communication. I've always loved to talk. I remember my report cards, my mother would tell me that all of my report cards, the teachers would say, Travis does his work well, but he talks a little bit too much. And so she would get these reports verbally, you know, and then some of them would also write it on the reports. And I also remember developing a love for writing. Now, my penmanship is terrible, absolutely terrible. So when I say I developed a love for writing, it was the idea of you being able to tell a story on screen if you're a script writer. So I fell in love with movies because I recognized that here was somebody who had the responsibility to write this movie and then give it to someone to bring to life on the screen. So I always loved to talk. I fell in love with writing. Naturally, those two combined to form a passion for communication.
Right. So now if you were to look at a young Travis, you would be able to say, you know, this guy's made for communications, but probably nobody knew that much about communications as a career field back then, to look at young Travis and say, you know, you should go into communications, journalism, PR. So you had to kind of figure it out for yourself. And now you're here. So you are in public relations and communication. I mentioned before that I wanted to be a veterinarian and a neurosurgeon. I wanted to be a vet because I used to watch Stanley, and Stanley's mom was a vet. And I used to watch Kim Possible, and Kim Possible's mom was a neurosurgeon. Media really affects the way we think about certain careers, right? So I think many people now probably thinking about PR are thinking about Olivia Pope from Scandal. Now, I've never watched it. I don't think you've ever watched it either. But
I watched one episode.
One episode. So, but I'm thinking that maybe that's not exactly what it's like, especially not for most people. So tell us, what is PR and what is PR not?
Well, it's interesting because when I was in university, I wrote an article and I referenced Scandal in it from just the one episode that I watched. And I had an interview with this very successful PR practitioner in Jamaica, Carmen Patterson. And one of the things that I realized from Carmen Patterson's story versus what is portrayed in Scandal with Olivia Pope is that PR isn't about being a spin doctor. So many times when you think about public relations, you think about being a spin doctor, meaning you manipulate information, you manipulate people, you show them what you want to show them, and you kind of hide what you don't want them to see. So on the surface, it looks like everything is great and they don't know the challenges behind the scenes. Having worked in PR, I've come to realize that PR is the management of communication. That's really what it is. It's the management of communication. If you want to make that into you being a spin doctor, you can. So for example, if you want to be a publicist for a very successful recording artist or a celebrity or whatever, you can be a publicist. That's PR too. But essentially what PR is, regardless of what specific niche that you target, is the management of information. And it is the successful communication of the information. And it's very important that we say the successful communication, because as you and many of your listeners will understand, communication doesn't take place until the message is clearly understood. So public relations isn't just putting out ads. It's not just putting things on television. It's not just spending money to do interviews or to print some stuff, some posters and flyers and give out. You can do all of that and you end up wasting your money if the information is not what you actually want to get out to your audiences.
Nice. It's a nice synopsis. And you mentioned a couple of things that people often confuse with PR. Advertising, selling, being a publicist. So we kind of cleared up that confusion. So it's the management of information, the management of communication. Now, what are some of the things involved in you managing information at NEPA? What are some of the most exciting things about your job? What are some of the things that aren't so exciting?
Okay. Well, I mean, just to kind of give, a little bit more on the previous question. In Jamaica, for example, you'll hear a lot of people combine public relations with marketing. So you'll probably see an ad in the paper and they want somebody to do public relations and marketing, or they want somebody to do public relations and advertising. Some people will want you to do sales and marketing, but then when you read the job description, what they really want is a public relations professional. Just to make that a little bit clearer, advertising is paid communication. So let's take, for example, one company. If we were to do advertising for this event, the Miseducated Career Guide series, advertising would be you spending some money to get it published in the paper so that persons can take an interest. Public relations is unpaid. So public relations now is you writing a press release, making it as interesting as possible, as engaging as possible, and sharing it with your sources, your contacts at the Gleaner, the Observer, media houses across the Caribbean, on LinkedIn, etc., so that this press release can probably be picked up and published in the paper. Or a journalist could probably come to the Miseducated Career Guide series this evening and cover your event and then go write an article about it. So you haven't spent any money to get the word out about what you are doing. What you've done is leverage your network to get the same effect. However, you can in fact spend some money to do some advertising, some paid promotion.
I can see the value of both, because the paid promotion can be a little more secure. In a way, you've paid for a certain product, and so you expect the product to be good and to have a wide reach. But when you're doing it unpaid, it's a lot more organic, and people who are really interested, people who are genuinely your community and are genuinely interested in your product will flock towards it. And I feel like in some ways the organic build-up lasts a little longer because people came out of more of a genuine organic space rather than just having something paid in front of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It also depends on your budget, of course, because the advantage of PR is you don't need to spend a lot of money as opposed to advertising. And it also depends on the type of product that you're rolling out. So, for example, if it's not going to be something that's going to give you a lot of returns on investment, or you don't envision it giving you a lot of returns on your investment, you might not necessarily want to spend a lot of money on advertising. Instead, you might want to just get people to cover it for you or promote it for you free. So it depends on your budget. It depends on the time that you have to get the message across. And it also depends on the type of event that you're having.
Nice, nice. So you guys might be hearing Travis and thinking that it sounds a little familiar. You might hear his voice on the advertisements on TVJ for the NEPA and You feature. And so that's a part of what his job involves, but not so much. But like he said, he manages communications. I'm sure, like Kelly mentioned, you have your reports to do, which might not be so exciting. And then you have the more exciting parts, the filmography. Do you get to interact with the environment, with the animals ever at all? Or are you just in the office?
So the most exciting part of my job is actually production. So it's taking something from scratch and getting it to a place where you're working with a film crew, you're working with a narrator, you're in studio, you're developing a script. And then when you get to hear this on radio, or you get to hear this or see this on television, it really gives you a sense of accomplishment. As for, do I get to go out in the office? Absolutely. And I think for me, that's been the most exciting part of working in communication at NEPA. It's a traveling officer position, the one that I'm in. And so like Kelly, like Treya here, they're the more technical people in their fields. But as it relates to the public education aspect, they'll invite me to come along with them. So I'll tag along with them and see what they're doing, see what they're working on, to see how can we now tell the story of what a Kelly is doing, what a Treya is doing, so that the layman, so that the public can really absorb it, and it helps to push NEPA's story even further. So yes, I get to travel with these people across the island, and it's very exciting, of course, pre-COVID. So yeah, traveling is definitely involved.
Yeah, definitely pre-COVID. And so clearly it's what you thought it would be. You talked about the script writer, and you're now writing scripts and involved in production. So you have the fulfillment of that job. let's talk money. We're always going to talk about the money. People are interested. What are salaries like in your field? Not necessarily in environment, because Travis has worked in two different environmental agencies, two different agencies that have to do with environment and climate change. So like Kelly, he's kind of formed a niche for himself where he's in his main industry, but then he's also had to learn a lot about this other industry. And so it forms a very nice, special little niche area there. So again, anybody who is interested in two different things, they have two different loves, and they don't want to pick one or the other, definitely you can make a career like Kelly or like Travis where you merge those things together. Now, in the field of PR in general, Travis, what are salaries generally like?
Salaries. So as Kelly would have mentioned, you know, it really varies. And I'm going to be a little bit more specific and tell you that in Jamaica, for example, you have 3 different areas or stakeholder groups that you generally work in. So you have the private sector, the public sector, and some people are in not-for-profits. You know, depending on how high up you go, you might get to where Kelly's talking about with the multilateral agencies and that sort of stuff. But in public sector, let me just tell you some of the salaries that I've seen for public relations. I've seen comfortable ranges from like 1.2 to all the way up to 2.6. And that's your base salary plus your traveling allowances. So that's you with a 9 to 5, clocking in, clocking out, and going home tired, having done the work. That's your salary. But one of the beautiful things about public relations, which again, people didn't tell me, is that public relations really lends itself to you doing freelancing, because so much of the work that you do can stand by themselves. For example, when you look at writing a script, that's something you can do and then move on with your life. When you look at developing graphics, that's something you can do as a designer and move on with your life. So to give you an idea, you can earn 1.9 plus your allowances, and you take that home. But then at the same time, if you were to probably do a press release, you can probably charge $15,000 for one press release. So you do the math. If you churn out 10 press releases for the week for 5 clients, you do the math right there. So you can make it what you want to.
All right, nice. And for those of you who are listening, that 1.9 is 1.9 per annum. Some of you are not yet in the working world. You don't quite know how this jargon works. That 1.9 is 1.9 per annum, and that works out to about 160,000 per month, right? And of course, you have to calculate that against your expenses. I think that's a relatively good salary for a single person with no other dependents. If you were to do a breakdown of like what rent is like in Jamaica, food and stuff, it gives you some wiggle room. As Kelly said, it's enough to survive. You can't go necessarily floss, but it is, you can live, you know? And then last question for you before we move on to Travis. So people who are interested in your field, what path should they take? What subjects, if they're in high school, should they be taking? What degree programs can they then funnel into?
Okay, so communication, as I said, it's really flexible. You can work in a number of industries because all industries require public relations. All industries require public relations. But if you're going to do it, then you need a base in the arts. You probably do some work in digital marketing. You can do some work in the core areas. So you can probably do some a degree in journalism, a degree in public relations, a degree in advertising to kind of get a base. But where you really get put yourself as an edge over other candidates for jobs is when you have other little technical skills. So even if you're doing arts and humanities, don't focus so much on the theory. You know, try and get some practical exposure into it. And so what I've come to realize is if you can do certificate courses, so if you as somebody in high school right now, you're thinking of arts and humanities, if you can get a certificate in digital marketing that's offered free online, you can find that free. If you can get that under your belt, leaving high school, you already have an edge over a lot of people going into the working world. So certificates in these practical areas is what I would encourage, in addition to a base in communication.
All right, nice. And some areas, where you can go and probably get those certificate courses. I know Travis has mentioned to me the Google Digital Garage, and he said, you know, that's free. That's there online for you to look at that. Udemy might have some courses as well. And Travis mentioned that every industry needs communication specialists, but there are also communication agencies, PR agencies that do communication for other companies. So you could work as a PR agent in a particular company, or you could work as a PR agent in a PR company and do PR for a variety of companies. So like he said, it's very flexible. If it's something that you're interested in, definitely explore that. Yes, Travis?
Right, so just one final point, the salary range that I had mentioned earlier, of course, that's for like a starting position. You coming in at the base, the higher up you go, you know, managerial level, director level is the more money you will, of course, start to.
And this is in Jamaica.
Yeah, that's in Jamaica.
Nice,
yeah.
Nice. I think Jamaicans should be able to make a career in Jamaica. You know, I don't think that's unreasonable. So, you know, it's nice when we can talk about Jamaica and what it's like here. Thank you very much, Travis. All right, finally, we have Treya King. Nice to have you, Treya. Now, your job is very personal for me. And I don't know if you guys know this, but you and Kelly are kind of the inspiration for this whole thing. So let me tell you, Treya, but you especially, my experience with biology is my lifelong love. It was my favorite subject in school. I can remember bio class and my bio teacher's voice, and even when I wasn't so good at it, I still loved it and I still worked at being better at it. That's how I knew I loved it, right? But at my high school, it always seemed kind of weird to just do one science. So I remember being one of those people who would look at the people who were doing one science or two sciences and just thinking, what are you going to do with one science? Like, you're just going to do bio alone? What are you going to do with bio? Like, and the reason for this is that many of my classmates wanted to be doctors. And to be a doctor, you need all three sciences. So that was the complete package. We couldn't see beyond a career in medicine. So we're looking at these individual sciences and we're like, where's that going to get you, right? So at one point I wanted to go into marine biology. I heard about it naturally on TV or YouTube or somewhere. And I thought this is something I'd want to do. But the voices, both inside my head and from the people around me, friends and family, were like, where are you going to get a job doing that? You know, who's going to pay you to study? Like, are you going to work in a lab? Do Jamaicans even care about marine biology and the environment and animals? Like, are you going to make any money? What are you going to do? Can you even find a job in this industry? So that was a short-lived dream. I let it go. And then when I finished biology after CSEC, I just dropped all the sciences because why keep one? You know? So I look at you sometimes and I figure that if I had better career advice, if I had better guidance when I was younger, I'd probably be doing what you're doing now. Or I'd probably try to get into doing what you're doing now, which is why it's very personal for me and why I wanted to have you on my first show. So that's the story. That's how you're here.
Nice.
So my first question for you, Treya, is coming off of that story. Were those people right? And to what extent were those people right? Is it hard to get a job with just a degree in biology in Jamaica? Are the jobs out there scarce in your field? What would you say?
Yeah, so the environmental field, specifically to do with like environmental management and wildlife, the jobs are very limited in Jamaica, unfortunately. I know quite a few people my age or around my, my age group who have come out of UE with like a degree in zoology, marine biology, botany, and there are very limited opportunities, and a lot of them are still looking for jobs. They're trying to get as much experience as possible, or they've had to like turn to other things just to make a living. So I look at myself as very fortunate to have a job at NEPA doing in a role that is relevant to my degree and also something I'm very passionate about. But I think one of the most important things is to always try and make opportunities for yourself. There are always opportunities out there. It's something I've seen as I've come into like the professional field. And they're endless. You just really have to look for them. And a lot of them come about just connecting with people, whether locally or internationally, and also work experience and just putting yourself out there. So that's why I always try and encourage people to, don't give up. If you can't find a job in the field you're passionate in, see where else, you can stumble upon.
Okay, nice. So you talked about other agencies. Where else, and I'm talking like across Jamaica, we'll get to international, but across Jamaica, where else could somebody with your passion and your qualifications work?
Okay, so you have NEPA, a few government agencies. You have the Forestry Department, you have the Urban Development Corporation. They have an environmental department. You have up to the ministries. I'm sure they have some positions, although they might be quite high up in terms of profession. But you also have quite a few NGOs in Jamaica. Just to name a few, you have Jamaica Environment Trust. You have quite a few sanctuaries, like fish sanctuaries that hire and marine parks. And yeah, it's a limited list overall, but they also offer like work experience opportunities and stuff like that. Yeah, so and then you also have, if you want to go into research, there's always the University of the West Indies and other academic institutions where you could lecture or get a research position and do wildlife work through that.
Nice. So so Treya is an environmental officer, especially focused on fauna, that's animals, wildlife. Where did you get your degree, Treya?
So I got my degree in the UK. I went to the University of Kent and did a degree in wildlife conservation, also known as conservation biology. And I went away because I had the opportunity to do so, and I really, really liked their program. I also found at UE, they didn't have a specific degree in my interest, which just focused on, conservation biology. That's, protected species management, habitat management, and it's like an array of subjects. But I found UE's choice didn't cater for what I was really interested in. So that's kind of why I went away, and I'm glad I did because the experience was amazing.
Nice, nice. I hope none of you are thinking that she talks about management and environment management. I hope none of you are thinking that Treya's job is boring at all. At all. I mean, I'm sure there are some boring stuff, and every job has boring stuff. Don't let TV fool you. Every job has boring stuff. But I look at Treya on Instagram, and she makes me want to hug a crocodile every day of my life. Like, she has made them seem like teddy bears. Like, they're so cute. She can catch a crocodile like nobody's business. That definitely is one of the exciting things about your job. What are the other exciting things about your job, and also what are what's the boring stuff?
Okay, so the most exciting part of my job is the field work, because I just love being out in the wild. I love interacting with the natural environment and looking at, just admiring everything that Jamaica is blessed with. But definitely the field work, doing research, environmental monitoring, management, wildlife response is also one of my favorite things, especially when it's to do with crocodiles. Like, for the most part, it's very positive, and I enjoy most of like the responses that we have to do. And then being able to travel. So I've seen places in Jamaica that I probably would have never seen if it wasn't for my job. And so that's pretty amazing. You find some cool, very quiet spots that are just really, really beautiful. And then also through my job, I've gone to conferences abroad, I've gone to workshops abroad. I've networked with a lot of international scientists, and that's a really, really cool thing, seeing other countries. And then, the other exciting part, trying to think, those are the most exciting aspects for me. Also seeing, the work you've put in, making a change in people's attitudes towards, wildlife, is always really rewarding. But in terms of what's not so exciting is the desk work. So being in office, processing applications, reviewing, environmental impact assessments, writing up reports that you really didn't want to deal with, and also dealing with certain situations that kind of put a damper on your mood or you get very frustrated over. But it's all part of the job. And overall, I really enjoy it.
Nice. So clearly, your job is what I thought it would be. Is your job what you thought it would be when you were going?
No, I didn't really know what to expect, because when I came back from England, I managed to secure an internship with NEPA for like 2 months. And I had no idea what to expect from NEPA. No idea, because the only work experience I had really gotten in Jamaica was working at Hope Zoo, volunteering there for a bit, which I really, really enjoyed. And so going into like a government agency, having no idea what to expect, it did surpass my expectations, to be honest. And I learned a lot with that internship. And because I made such an impression, and I came in with like a new outlook, a degree from the UK, which taught me, stuff that was very specialized and different from what the average UE student was learning in their environmental degree. I guess it gave me a bit of a, I guess, advantage with certain, aspects that needed working on in the agency. So because of that, they offered me a position. They offered me a temporary position at first, which was like a level 4 position, which wasn't that well paid, but it was just temporary. And then I eventually got, permanent employment as an environmental officer, and that was really, really cool. But it wasn't anything that I imagined. I think a lot of what I've experienced in NEPA has also been the opportunities that I have found through my work. So for example, I'm doing a big research project right now on the American crocodile, where we're doing like a countrywide assessment to like figure out how many are left out there, where their best habitat is, their movements, their interactions, which is urgently needed to strengthen the conservation efforts. And one of the reasons why I was able to do this and make it a project at NEPA is because I reached out to a crocodile research group in the University of Florida. And they wrote back and they were just like, come and do an internship with us and learn all the skills that you need. And I worked with them. They helped me write this proposal. And then it ended up being a collaborative project between NEPA, University of Florida, and then I signed on as a master's student at UWI. And so the work that I'm doing at NEPA is actually part of my master's as well, because I really want to get into research. So I found a way to do something that benefits NEPA, but also benefits me, and allows me to pursue higher education. So that's worked out really well. And through that, I've gotten a lot of opportunities to go to workshops, conferences. I've learned so much. I've met a lot of amazing people. So it's been good so far.
That is a nice package deal. That is a nice package deal. So you mentioned that there are opportunities to branch off, to work with international agencies, to work in research, to lecture, to all these things. It's definitely a very expansive field. Now, Trey, we don't want to go far past 7:15, but I have two questions for you. Salaries. You mentioned salaries in what you just said a while ago. What are you thinking? Salary. What are salaries like? Wow.
It makes me mad because I feel like my field is like saving the world or trying to, and it's a very underpaid field. It's I expected it because I knew from the get-go, environmental field doesn't pay well, but I was in it for like my passion. I think for government, the pay is average, but for the long term, as you were saying, like if you want to buy a house, if you want to have kids, it's not a salary that you could survive on your own. Like if you were on your own to do that alone. It's also, the other issue I have is that my job, it also takes me out of office hours because I might be in the field all night. I might be responding to a crocodile incident on the weekend, or I have to communicate with people before my workday even begins. So you kind of feel overworked and not rewarded in the sense of pay. And I think that is a thing in government. With my field has to be very flexible to work. And because government is kind of set, certain positions, 9 to 5, this amount of pay, it doesn't allow for flexibility. It doesn't allow for many benefits for people who are working super hard and going above and beyond what their job actually, expects, because you're out there trying to save, wildlife and deal with certain issues. So I don't know what the private sector is like. I have a feeling that it's similar. I think government is better in terms of the benefits that are offered. I think for my field, the way to make money is either going into, as Kelly was saying, environmental consultancy. That's guaranteed to get you a bit of money. Or if you want to get into research, pursue a PhD, become a lecturer, become a research fellow, or even become famous and be a media personal. There are definitely opportunities to kind of expand and make more money in my field. You just have to figure it out, and you may have multiple streams of income in order to make ends meet. But for a startup position, for me right now, it's fine. It's brilliant. I'm able to kind of save on the side, and then plan for the future. But for long term, I think my field, it's tricky. And if you want to go above, be a manager in a government agency or director, it takes a certain type of person. And it depends what you're into as well.
Okay. All right. And well, finally-ish, because I have one question that I want to ask all three of you. So somebody trying to get into your field in Jamaica right now, what can they study? Where can they go?
Okay, so in terms of locally, University of the West Indies, the life sciences department, they have the degrees that are relevant to this field. It's along the lines of zoology, marine biology, botany, environmental management. So I always stress to people, make sure it's best to get a degree that's relevant to this field. And it definitely does give you a boost up. I guess in any field, the degree is really, really important, because I know people who don't have degrees and they are so passionate about conservation, but they are limited in their opportunities because of it. I always stress that work experience gives you that level up. Definitely. If you can volunteer with any of the NGOs, get an internship at NEPA, volunteer with Hope Zoo, Like my volunteering experience at Hope Zoo definitely helped with me getting an internship at NEPA when I came back from university. And it also helps you figure out, you know, what you want to do, what do you want to specialize in, because you may not know. Like I only knew that I wanted to work in the environmental field. But once I, you know, read up on it, started looking at university degrees and started working at Hope Zoo, I got a good idea of what I wanted to specialize in, and that was wildlife conservation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's good, because the theory of the classroom might tell you what you like to learn, but it doesn't tell you what you like to do in the real world, you know. So
exactly,
you know, work experience is definitely good for that. So one question for you across the board. I'm going to start working backwards. So Treya, then Travis, then Kelly. What is one piece of advice that you would offer either to young people or even older people who are seeking to enter the working world or maybe switching careers? And this is just general, your experience in the working world, maybe not necessarily in your particular field, but what's one piece of career advice that you would offer to people listening right
now? I think I'd have to go back on the whole work experience thing. I think it's a tricky one. Work experience, very, very important, and also putting yourself out there for any opportunities that may be relevant to, you know, your career. I think in terms of switching careers, I think if you have found that you're passionate in another field, like take that leap, take that risk, because you enjoy life a lot better when you're passionate about your job, and take it sooner than later, because you know later on in life you have more responsibilities and all that stuff. So I think, yeah, and also seek advice. Like you can, if you find that there's an agency or an individual that could potentially like give you advice, reach out to them, because a lot of us are happy to give you advice. I have people messaging me on IG, Instagram all the time asking like, how do I get into this field? And I'm happy to give them advice. So I think that's another thing, you know, especially in this day and age, like with social media, access to information is a lot easier. So yeah.
Nice. Thank you. Travis?
I think I would say focus on adding value. So regardless of whatever field you end up going into, focus on adding value. Focus on adding value to those who might employ you. Focus on adding value to those who provide you with an internship opportunity, whatever it is. Add value to their organizations, right? Because persons are interested in that. Persons are, first of all, looking for what you can do for them. It might sound a bit selfish to say, but what you need to understand is that at the end of the day, the person is looking at how much money they're putting into employing you, how much money they're putting into facilitating you for an internship, etc. And even if it's not just money, it might be other things that they are putting in, other resources. So what you can do, what the reasonable thing for you to do, is to add value to their organization. And honestly, if you can add value while you're in your current job, a current role, it might mean the difference between you staying in that role or you being promoted to another role.
Nice. Thank you. Kelly?
I'd say sometimes you may not start out in what you love or what you're passionate about, but passion does come over time. Before starting working at NEPA, I really didn't think twice about the environment. I really didn't think twice about conservation or climate change or protection. But once I got into the field and I saw what was happening and what needs to be done and the hard work that needs to be put in, I realized that, you know, passion is growing, and sometimes passion comes over time. Also, if it doesn't come over time, like if you're in a job and it's not coming, you can use that job as a stepping stone to another job. you can network through that job to probably find something that you like. So passion grows over time. So you don't always have to start out in what you love.
Thank you guys so much. Our first 3 career guides, Kelly Gow, environmental economist, Travis Bartley, public education and community outreach officer, Shreya, environmental officer with special responsibility for fauna, all from the National Environment and Planning Agency of Jamaica. This was amazing, guys. 2 of my key takeaways are get work experience, whether through internships, volunteering, whatever it might be. And also, you may not have to choose between 2 passions. Like Travis and Kelly, you may be able to merge your 2 passions to make a beautiful career. Thank you guys so much. For those of you who are here, please look out for when our next Miseducated Career Guide episode will be. You can follow me you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Khadijah Bartley. You can follow me on Instagram at khadijah.db, KHADIJAH.db, and my professional page at Miseducation, MISSEDUCATION, misseducationja. Thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you for being here and have a wonderful evening.